Welcome to Convergence.fm. I'm your host, Ashok Shivanand.
These are all like $20, $30 a month tools. And it was all off the back of like 2-hour session of training them. So It made us really rethink what's possible with this technology.
On the show, we explore how purpose-driven leaders align their culture, operations, and experimentation to de-risk the decisions that really matter and lead AI-enabled businesses with clarity. Convergence.fm. Transform from the inside out. I talk to a lot of CEOs and folks who sit on boards that talk about their companies that are doing AI. When I ask a little bit more, they talk about rolling out Copilot. Maybe they've got a few pilots going. Some of them even are developing agents. But when I ask them what's actually changed in their business that they can speak to, there's very little they can talk about. Welcome back to Convergence.fm. Today, I'm speaking with Dawid Naude, who's the CEO and founder of Pathfindr AI, a fast-growing AI capability firm out of Australia, who's also an early OpenAI partner out there. They work with clients like Kohl's Group to roll out AI, and that's a company similar to Kroger or a Walmart here in the US. What makes Dawid different is that he's not selling transformation decks or theoretical frameworks. He's spent 2 years actually in the trenches, figuring out what actually works when it comes to getting real adoption inside traditional companies. And what he's found is surprisingly counterintuitive, I bet. The first thing is that it's not about starting with agents. It's not about massive investment. It's definitely not about waiting for the perfect strategy before you get started. It starts with something that's much simpler to understand, but admittedly a lot harder to implement. It's getting yourself, the CEO or the operator, as well as your leadership team, becoming actual users, maybe even power users of the foundational AI models. From there, our discussion unpacks a practical, field-tested approach to AI adoption. There's some awesome stories like how a real estate firm outpaced enterprises with their AI investment using just $20 tools, why having internal champions matters more than your org chart, how to rethink job descriptions when AI becomes a real part of the team, and how to avoid the biggest mistake CEOs make, treating AI as an IT initiative instead of an operational model shift. If you're a CEO or operator trying to figure out how to move from experimentation and dabbling to real impact and transformation, I think this conversation has a lot of nuggets to build your blueprint on how AI can actually change your business. Here's Dawid Naude from Pathfindr AI on Convergence.fm. Subscribe to the podcast to get future episodes as soon as they're published. If you find this helpful, give the podcast a 5-star rating on your podcast app or hit that like button on YouTube. Hi, Dawid. I've been really looking forward to having this conversation. Welcome to Convergence.fm.
Thanks, Ashok. Thanks for having me on.
I love what y'all are doing at Pathfindr down in Australia with respect to helping drive AI adoption. So you seem to have like a tried and tested kind of 3 or 4 stage process. So I figured we'll start there and then we can dig deeper from there.
Yeah, of course. So it's a tried and tested process, but it's more that it's evolved to what it is now through a lot of just tons of iterations and just observations of how to get a company transforming with AI. So I'll start with that word, right? Like people say transforming, I want to transform my business with AI. Now what does that mean? Initially, we started with actually like building custom agents 2 years ago. That was 2 years ago. That's kind of how our journey started was if you're going to do AI, it's going to be complex and it's going to be expensive and it's going to be big. You're going to build these agents. And what we realized almost by kind of accident is that there's tremendous power just in adopting the technology, and also understanding of the technology shifted as well. And a lot of that came from one real estate company that we simply did some training for. Small real estate company, never going to like build custom agents and things like that. We just did some training for them, and they asked if they could get 2 check-ins as well. And in the space of kind of those 2 weeks, we saw them get further, just simply adopting off-the-shelf tools, because that's all we train them on, than any of the big corporates we'd been working with their millions of dollars of investment into AI. This real estate company, they'd created agents in ChatGPT, or GPTs in ChatGPT, to write property listings in the format that they wanted, and that was a great time saving. But they'd also taken like bond exit condition reports, where a real estate agent would have marked that like the windows might be damaged or curtains, carpets need cleaning, whatever. You could put that into a GPT that they created, and it would write a really nice letter to the tenant of the things they need to do. And then also they went further. They refreshed all of their like tenant handbooks using great images and icons back then in a tool called Gamma, and also did it in like 7 languages. And then they took it a step further and just used Hagen to create like a AI video replica of the CEO, so that she could give property updates at the end of each month in also like 7 different languages, and really lent into the fact that it was AI. And then so the marketing team would just have to update the text each month to do that. And these are all like $20, $30 a month tools. And it was all off the back of like 1 2-hour session of training them. So it made us really rethink what's possible with this technology. But there were a couple of things in that very small engagement that were clues of a much more powerful approach. Like one was that even though it was a real estate company of like 30 people, they'd nominated like 5, 6 superstars in the company to be their champions, and they'd elevated them in the process to say, great, we're getting this training for the company, but there's 5 or 6 of you. They're going to figure out how to apply it in your roles and experiment, apply. We've gotten some help, and then we're going to check in and get some feedback and see how we're going. So that kind of champions group was really important, and then elevating them, and also the leadership team taking it seriously and getting involved themselves. Those are all kind of clues of of how to make this work. And then we started including that in our approach when we worked with customers, training the leadership team, then working with the champions group. And what we found is, as soon as you train your leadership team how to be power users of the technology, and it's a really important word, users, not a strategy, not a like governance framework, not you interacting with a PowerPoint when it comes to AI, a leadership team. It's actually you interacting with the tools themselves, that it just unlocks so much within the company. But there's one nuance with the leadership team, is training them how to use the technology to be better leaders, to be more strategic, to make better decisions, as opposed to being more productive. And so one of the things we do with them is help them do a career reflection using AI. AI's got access to all of your emails, calendar, can see how you spend your time, can tell a lot about you, and also how to use AI to actually create an AI approach for your division. And we found it to be incredibly successful, no matter what size the company.
Yeah, and so I'm trying to kind of try and put this in sequence for a company that's thinking about it. It's getting the leadership to be power users first. And then it sounds like it's identifying some champions. And then from there, it sounds like this real estate company, there's a lot of ideas that kind of flow from there that makes it a lot easier to drive the adoption beyond the champions. Is that kind of how you look at it too?
Yeah, so the specifics of that is, so when you, if you're in this world every day, opening up a tool like ChatGPT and seeing an empty prompt input window, it's not an intimidating thing at all. You know what to use it for. You know it handles ambiguity. You know you can ramble. You also know you don't have to get it right the first time. You can go back and forth. And also you already have lots of ideas of how to use it. But that is not at all the reality of almost everybody who's not involved with actually delivering this stuff. People lack inspiration and they lack capability. They don't know what to use it for, and they don't know how to use it. You do know how to use this tool. You need to know about models. There's hot tips that make a huge difference, and even some understanding of prompting. So what the Champions Group do is they get expert training and support to find all the ways that AI is successful in their area. So, for instance, if you're in the legal side of the business, you've gotten this training. Great. Now let's test how well let's say an agent in Copilot, how well can it review a SharePoint folder that has all of our previous contracts in, to do an assessment of are all of our contracts consistent or something like that. There's only one person in the company who can say if that's accurate or not. It is the lawyer who does that every single day, looks at those things. And so they pave the way. Now, when they use it, they'll find it either works or it doesn't quite work that well, or they don't know how to use it. And that's where the support is really important. So could I use this beast of an Excel spreadsheet? We use this to then create this PDF and this report. Could I use AI to do this? And it's like, yeah, well, you can, but first make it easy for AI by get rid of all the tabs, put it all in one table, things like that. You've made it easy for you to consume, but not so easy for AI to consume. So that's where the capability, they might have had the idea to do it, they didn't know it was possible, but they needed some help with the capability. Then there's also just some issues potentially with getting the prompts right, even the model right, and so solving those small things. It's great when you do that with a smaller group that are great, that are easy to work with, that are invested in the process. And so they pave the way typically for about 3 months and find all the ways to use AI in the area. We are equally even more interested in the ways that it doesn't work. It's really important. Let's not shy away from that. There are some areas that it's either it's not appropriate for whatever reasons to not use it there. So cataloging those is really important. Now, those people's use over 3 months, a few great things you can do with that. One is it informs policy. So acceptable use policy, you can update it. We use it for these things. We don't use it for these other things. And the second thing is you can turn that into decisions around, do we just adopt, or is there something we actually specifically have to build that makes it much easier, as opposed to stringing together 3-4 prompts? With the way all this technology is advancing, you'd leave build late, late, because a lot of things just wait and it will come. If you think of all the SharePoint connectors and all that, those were custom projects a year ago, whereas now it's off the shelf. It's the same with a lot of agent building. And the final step is before you roll it out to the rest of the organization, you get to turn the champion's use of the technology into training material, into change management material. And so when you're rolling it out to a marketing team, you're not doing an AI 101 for them. You're how to use marketing, how we do marketing at this retailer for improving brand performance, something like this. So it's very, very, very specific. And one of the amazing things as well is through the process, you're also transcribing and recording every single session that you're running, which means you just put the transcripts into an agent and create an FAQ because they've had questions in those sessions and they've been answered. And so you don't have to do that yourself manually. You can just get an agent to do it yourself. And everything I've just spoken about is all possible in these very, very simple apps, but incredibly powerful models that power them.
Yeah, so some of the things that seem like amazing outcomes by sort of getting started, identifying your champions, are the more you use it, the more it'll surface in terms of what kind of policy and governance you need. You can turn to looking to whether it's worth building stuff. And I tend to agree with you. Oftentimes, there's a lot that can be done with minimal development, and we're just kind of bringing forth some legacy debt maybe in how we think of thinking we need to build stuff, whereas a lot of stuff is already built or being built very rapidly by the core models themselves. And then I love that some of those early wins turn into training material to help drive adoption beyond the champions, as well as you can use AI here to kind of paint the history picture to make it that much more relevant. I love that. I'm curious about a number of things there. The first one is around choosing the champions. Back when we used to help build innovation labs within enterprises, we had to find this balance between the hand raisers, the people who were really keen, maybe the early adopters, and then also people who had the right amount of authority. And where we landed was like the authority doesn't matter as much if we have buy-in from the highest level. Whether, in our case, it was oftentimes a CTO or CIO of like a big car company or something. And having the authority level of anyone kind of between the developers and the CIO was less relevant compared to the developers being really hyped up and charged about a new way of working. Where a lot of the other problems kind of went away with their enthusiasm acting as lubricant. And I'm curious, when you work with the leadership team to help them identify the champions, what are some best practices that you help them from sort of burning their fingers?
Yeah, definitely. So you're right to tread cautiously with people self-nominating. Your best champions may not know that they could be the best champion because they may not have used AI before. And very recently, as recent as a week ago, one really prominent new company that we'll hopefully be able to share their name soon, that we started working with, we reviewed their comms that they were going to send internally, announcing the program and then the champions nominations. And they had a sentence in there that's you need to be already familiar and using with AI. And the rest of the comms was fantastic, but that was the one sentence that we changed for them and said, you don't need to have been using AI. You'll get training because this is what we need is people who are very curious, open-minded, capable. Like they need to be high performers. Like this is somebody who knows their job. And this might be the team lead in a call center that's been there for like 7 years and has seen every single possible nuance of issue that they might encounter. So they have to have depth in their role. That's a critical thing. They need to have depth in their role. The authority that they have is not the title. It is actually their reputation within the company, as if they say that something doesn't work and suited for the process, they'll be listened to because they're a high performer. And then the final thing is they need to be able to, I wouldn't even say they need to be given capacity to do it, but they need to apply to the role. But this is something they need to want to do. They need to opt in. It's not something to be dragged to do. But one critical thing that does make it successful is you don't kind of sell it to them. So you elevate the role as like you don't like the best like CEOs and top performers. They're not begged to come and take that role. Like it's a privilege. It's elevated, and that's exactly what you do with those champions. Is you actually say, look, there's a lot of expectation on this role. Like we're moving to the future. Nobody can know the role that AI plays within our company in the future. There's not a single consultant on the planet who can help us with that. They can help us, sure, but they can't tell us what that is. We have to find what it is for ourselves. And so you're going to be part of that journey and helping us pave that way. So elevating the role that is high expectations, but really it's a privilege. It's a really big privilege to be part of this, is important messaging.
I love that. And one of the questions I had was around depth versus breadth, because what we've noticed is that oftentimes a company has the opportunity to change their operating model. And part of that is reallocating accountability, because AI is now able to take over different things, maybe create a different user customer experience. And previously you would say, hey, that usually marketing was responsible for that, or so-and-so would have done that. And if things get really siloed, as large companies tend to end up in, having the depth is great, but without the breadth, you have trouble interacting with other pieces of the puzzle. So I love this reputational aspect that you mentioned, which might end up kind of making that easier to do cross-departmental work. I'm curious if you've seen anything similar about how to get kind of the silos broken down or rethinking the organization altogether, being AI enabled.
Yeah, so it's a journey that a company has to go through, that you can't. Okay, so if you start with the leadership team, it's fantastic, and then you have the champions. One of the best things the champions team can do is, at the end of 3 months, they rewrite their role descriptions, their job descriptions, and they're doing this role at the moment, and get them to rewrite what this job should be doing in the future versus what it shouldn't be doing. And so that's incredibly empowering, because that now, top level management theory, operating models, like it's not something we're particularly deep in, but it's what we're look at. If you take a group of people and there's a whole lot of things that they're doing at the moment that they don't need to be doing, it's not a good use of their skill set. They were good at that stuff 10 years ago, and it's not leveraging the things that they're very good at now. If you work with them over 3 months, they will delegate a lot of that work to AI, and then they will also elevate a lot of their work by leveraging AI. And some examples in this space is, let's just take like a sales rep as an example. So if you're in sales, it's such a universal job. It's literally in every single company. You have your top sales reps, and they're usually fantastic. A lot of their skills are timeless. It's not system based, as in the tech. Like, it's, what do? They prepare for each meeting. They take detailed notes. They follow up. They research. That stuff takes time, but it's also quite hard to know. It's quite hard to instill that best practice to somebody who's either new to the industry, has been in sales, but they're new to that industry, or they're new to sales. So this is where having a meeting preparation, prospect preparation agent is tremendously useful. And this is very, very easy to do. You could do this in ChatGPT, you could do this in Copilot, anything like that, where you have a simple tool that will look at who you're meeting with and do research about them, identify the pain points in the industry. Our version of this prompt has some things like, explain it like I'm 12, because we're completely industry agnostic, and a lot of this stuff sounds like Greek to me. Like, when I read it, I don't understand this industry, and just that simple part of this white paper that we get, explain it like I'm 12, and then it explains what their customers do. So I want to understand their customers' journey. And then also simple, like, what do they do versus what don't they do? Things that people might typically misinterpret. Like one recent one is like a big kind of utilities maintenance company that if you're piped, if like you see water flowing in the street or there's an issue, whatever, you call the council, municipality, and then they send somebody out. It's this company that does that. Now, a common thing would be you'd think that that company works for the resident. They don't. They work for the municipality. So like that's their customers. But it spelled these things out. And this is something that would take a lot of time to do manually, but can be done automatically. That's fact finding. But then there's kind of sales best practice, which is, these are the people you're working with. These are the people on the call, and this is what I found out about them. And there's a lot of kind of tribal knowledge in sales that is difficult to translate to other people. It happens over time. So you might think this person's just joined this company and they're having a call with me. Awesome. They're not a decision maker. Like, they might sign the piece of paper, even if they're the CEO that you're meeting with and they've just joined this company. If you're new in sales, you go, great, this person's going to want to get stuff done. They're not going to make any big decisions without consulting a few other people first. And so this is where, if you're experienced in sales, you'd know this, but if you're new in sales, you don't. But this is what the white paper could tell you, is that this person is likely to consult so-and-so, 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 because those people have been in the company for an incredibly long amount of time, and they're not on this call. So an objective you should have on this call, a question to ask is, what do these three people think of this initiative, and should are you open to? I'm happy to have a chat with those people. So those things are really important. And then what happens at the end of the 3 months? Rewrite your job description. A good way to think about it is, what is the role of an agent on an organizational chart? Like at the end of those 3 months. And in the case of sales, you have a sales assistant to do all the research and everything like that, low-level kind of research. But then also you have a sales coach, an expert coach that says, look, I know you think this person's going to, like, they say they're supercharged, they're ambitious, they've got a great reputation, they've just joined. Put yourself in their shoes. Would you make a major decision on a new partner that you've never worked with before without consulting the people that have been there for 15 years that are actually, that know how the business works and have other people? So make sure you unearth that. So those are two roles that should absolutely be on an org chart as support.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned org chart, because I think there's a pretty common misconception among CEOs across two things. One, when you ask them what they're doing with AI, a lot of them kind of sheepishly talk about how their CIO is getting Copilot installed. And I'm sure there's like a whole set of, there's a whole can of worms we can get into there about how that's by no means transformation. And then the other thing you mentioned that I love is how agents have a point in the org chart. And there's a lot of benefit around transparency, visibility to everybody in terms of where this agent, who their agent serves, and what function they ultimately fall under. And another mistake I find people trying to sort of do the org chart exercise is they put all the agents under the CIO's office, under like the AI maintenance person. When, if you look at HR, you're not going to have everyone reporting to HR in the same way when you had traditional employees and you have them reporting to different kind of lines of business or where they kind of line up to. So I'd love for you to double click on either or both of those.
Yeah, definitely. So, whether putting agents on an org chart is the right way or the wrong way, we're kind of less interested in that and much more interested in what's useful and what seems to work. And when people are overwhelmed about how to get started with AI, we found that what makes a huge impact is when you describe it as a person. And so you think of AI, we describe it as three individuals. You have an assistant, a thinker, and a creator that are joining your organization, kind of low-level grad, then a super strategist, and then somebody who can make videos, audio, now code as well. We found that analogy, that metaphor works incredibly well. And so if you think of talking about something like guardrails, that really it's like ethics, and the person comes with those things. You don't have to build them in. It actually has a base set of principles. And then you think of if somebody joined your company and they didn't have access to email, how useful would that person be? And they didn't have access to systems. And so that opens up the conversations about MCP and connectors and things like that. We've just found that this concept of a person, it still translates very usefully to putting it on an org chart. It helps people think about it. Also because the initial way that people interact with agents, I'm not saying it should be the final way, but the initial way is very much like interacting with a person. You ask it something and you ask it in a text box. It's just how we interact with people on Slack and Teams every single day. And so it feels very similar. Hey, could you do this for me? Could you research this? Hey, can you digest this file? And so that kind of helps people understand. We have had issues with that metaphor where just one or two customers that weren't comfortable of using that just because they're in incredibly unionized industries, and we're just using it as an analogy, like as a metaphor. We're not literally saying you're removing the sales assistant and now you're adding a sales agent assistant to the org chart. It's just your sales team never had one in the first place, and so you wouldn't put a CRM on the org chart, but that's not kind of the same thing. But it helps people understand. The other thing that you were mentioning there was just around where it lives within a company. Now, I saw recently, I actually think it might have been Satya Nadella, the Microsoft CEO. I think it was him. I might be wrong, but he was saying that one of the issues with like Microsoft Copilot adoption is why there's been this barrier is middle managers like feeling their jobs are threatened or something along those lines. And that's just not at all what we have seen. So a role like Microsoft Copilot, ChatGPT, it absolutely has a role to play, just the same as connecting your computer to the internet. It is an enabling function. We have never seen a customer that hasn't had an incredibly impressive result by adopting a generalist or a universal tool like Copilot or ChatGPT and getting enabled on it properly. Copilot often has, and I was very worried for my first Copilot implementation because I was very much all in on ChatGPT. But we found incredible value, particularly how well it leverages SharePoint, which is where so much of people's data lives. And also, as a starting point, we're trying to make it as easy as possible. The fact that it is native access to your email and calendar, which ChatGPT does now, and Gemini with the connectors and Claude, but at the time it was just Copilot that really had it. All of the intelligence, all of the insight of your company, it's actually really in people's emails. So if you think of, if you're a lawyer, it's not in your contract management system or something, it's actually in your email. Like how many times it took back and forth. There's fingerprints there in your all over in your email, and so that's an important capability is the adoption. And this is the role. This is where something like the chief people officer needs to have their role really elevated. Which is there's a couple of things at play here. One is adoption and mindset is really important, but it's the future of work. Like what do role descriptions look like? What do we hire for? Literally what capabilities are our grads arriving with, and will those capabilities become expectations? If you're good at using an AI tool at university, got you through university, you will expect that your employer will have that tool. Imagine using Google at university and then arriving, and then you said, no, we don't use Google. You have to go to the library if you want to research something. It's not okay. So that's their role. Then you have the CIO. Their role is is making sure it is secure, compliant, and scalable. They are an enabling function, and there's been too much expectation placed on them to have to be the bastion of carrying this forward within an organization. It often reflects a lot on the organization's culture. If a CIO has been asked to do this, and the CIO has done it for the last 2 years with very little progress, and they haven't asked for help, that's kind of probably a warning cell either of the individual or of the culture across the leadership team. And so these are the kind of the enabling things. You think of the chief customer officer or anybody in kind of chief product officer, with this technology, how will our customers want to interact with us? They could interact with us anyway, but how will they want to interact with us, and what elevates the experience? So these groups working together is incredibly important, and that's why we think it really is non-negotiable. It has to start with the leadership team. They have to become power users of this technology. But thankfully, it's never happened where we've trained up a leadership team and they haven't seen the incredible impact, not for their teams, not for their company, but for themselves almost immediately.
And for someone listening that has been meaning to use it more, I imagine you've had a lot of trial and error around, one or two kind of tips that might drive adoption a little bit more. One of the things I like to tell people to do is just change their homepage. So when they open a new tab, instead of going to Google, it goes to ChatGPT. And so you create some micro friction. Another one I think is like asking the AI to prompt you and gather more context so the responses can be more relevant. And I'm curious, things along those levels of granularity, What are some things that you find really helpful?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things, like there's some hot tips, like some of the ones you just gave there that make a huge difference. And then there's one or two things that take a split second to do, but makes a lot more sense if you understand what's actually happening. And so the biggest impact, the biggest difference the biggest action anybody can take to completely transform their experience with AI is to use thinking/reasoning models by default instead of the base or instant models. It's also a good reminder of how new, how fast AI is evolving. I couldn't imagine using AI today if we didn't have thinking models. But O3 is like just over a year old, and that was an absolutely phenomenal evolution of ChatGPT's models. And the deep research agent from ChatGPT was released in February last year. It's not even a year old. Yet today we couldn't imagine life without those. A lot of people would remember when we had the DeepSeek moment just over a year ago. That was because they'd found that found a hyper efficient way to do thinking or reasoning. Now, what are thinking models? So these are the ones that you can see thinking through the problem before it answers. And this is what's called chain of thought. And it's not the text that you see kind of writing in front of you. It usually says thinking, and you have to push the button to expand it. And you can see how it's thinking. And the first thing you'll see it do is try to understand what you asked. So if you say, can you help me write a marketing strategy for a small to medium business in Australia that focuses on helping cafes improve their service experience, something like that. The first thing you'll see is it actually think through, okay, so the user's asking about this thing, and then you'll see it plan. It'll go, okay, so I better research SMB in Australia, I better do all these things. And so it might reason for 2 seconds. And by the way, if it's reasoned for 2 seconds, it's still a massive improvement, because the first thing it's done is it's improved your prompt. It's rewritten your prompt for you. And we use the analogy of the assistant thinker creator here quite to help elevate this. The assistant is the instant models, which are also fantastic, but for a different purpose. And then you have the thinker models. And we explain, if you're delegating a task within a team, the number one indicator of whether or not that task is going to be done to the standard that you like is literally who you give it to. Absolutely who you give it to. So I know management theory and all that will say it's about how you ask the question, it's the context and all of that. I agree that helps. But if you just give it to a highly capable person, they figure it out. They'll Google it, right? If you give them a vague instruction that they don't understand, they're not going to fail on the task. They're going to ask somebody for more things. They're going to Google it. They're going to do that. And so that's where choosing the right model is really important. Now, I'm not telling you to pick from a million models. I'm telling you to pick from two, either the instant models, base models, or the thinking models. With OpenAI, with GPT 5.2, they have Auto. This came out from GPT-5, but the current model is 5.2. Auto tries to decide, based on the complexity of the question, if it does instant or thinking. And there's reasons for this. One is users are fickle. People do want an instant response. We don't like waiting. And so we're happy to trade off a fast answer for a better answer sometimes. But the other is there is a genuine chip shortage of graphics chips that actually power AI. And so it is a great way for the model providers like OpenAI to balance all of the requests that are going to these to the models. But what we recommend is just have thinking on by default. So you can push the drop down, you can hit thinking, even if you do it as light thinking. Mine lives on extended thinking. I'm happy to wait a minute for the right answer. You can do this in Copilot. You can do it in Claude. You push extended thinking. You can do it in Gemini. You just flip to the Pro model. All of them support this remarkable capability. So that's one fundamental thing, is just give things to the thinker first and foremost. There's a couple of hot tips. Okay, the first big hot tip is we actually don't teach much prompting. I know it's very against the grain of how everybody else teaches AI, because a great prompt is always going to be contextual to the problem that you're trying to solve. So, and that's unique. The example about the cafe, you'd have to say, make sure you consider, this is the area that I'm working in, this is the competition. You'd have to give it all this information, which is a heck of a lot of work, and you don't know to ask those things. So just ask AI to ask you. So say, I'm trying to optimize my marketing campaign for my cafe, whatever it is. Can you help me create a strategy for the next year? But ask me 5 questions before answering. Ask me 5 questions before answering. It's going to come back and say, how much budget do you have? Are you trying to solve a particular issue? Who's your competition? What types of customers do you have? Do you have any data you could give me to help? And all of a sudden, you've got all sorts of things to give back to them. Now, with AI, more is more. The more context and the more information you give it, the better. But typing is hard work, particularly when you're interacting with this all day. And the most underused, highest impact hot tip is to use the dictate button. So push the microphone button, not the voice mode button, which is the thing next to it, which flips it into like a conversation, like an interview over voice. The dictate button is just taking voice to text and ramble, because dictate has always been there for us. We don't use it because you end up correcting you correct it more than it takes longer to correct it than it takes time to write it the right way. But with AI, it doesn't need to be perfect. It can have a million ums. You can contradict yourself and then fix it later. You can just ramble, and you'll be blown away how much context you can give AI in 1 to 2 minutes by just looking at their questions, pushing the dictate button, and just talking. Hit enter, and then all that goes in and it comes back out. And so those things are incredibly important. The one thing to make those things come to life, I still haven't given an idea of inspiration. That's all capability, teaching you how to use it, not what to use it for. The first thing to use it for in that example is literally, I've never used AI. I'd say localize it to the tool you're using so you can get immediate impact. So I've never used Copilot, I've never used ChatGPT. I've never used ChatGPT before. I've just got this license. Can you ask me 5 questions and then help me find the top 5 ways to use it within the next day? And then just do that. And that will all of a sudden realize that the helper to get going with AI is right in front of you. And if you wanted to one like real thing that I use all the time, help it plan your week, particularly if it's got access to your calendar. It's going to ask you what's most important to you this week. It's going to be really good if it's got access to your calendar and email and help you actually plan what are your big rocks for the week. I use it as a thought partner and a mentor and a coach, reflection partner more than anything. And that's the most impact it's had for me personally.
So tell me your take on the models.
So on ChatGPT, it's now, they are separate models, but it is just like 5.2 thinking. And then there's on the chat UI, there's 4 different levels of thinking from light through to heavy thinking. And then you've got 5.2 Pro, which by all accounts, like on benchmarks and evaluations, and even in my own personal use, is the most powerful model in the world at the moment. You've got a couple of runs of that per month on like a plus or a business or an enterprise edition. But if you actually buy the Pro subscription, it's like $300 a month. You have unlimited runs on that, and that will take about half an hour or an hour. But you can give it like 10 different spreadsheets. It takes up to 10 attachments, but one of those attachments could be a behemoth of a spreadsheet. And it's remarkable of how it's able to run code to synthesize and then package things up and then get a beautiful like zip file at the end that has everything you need. On Claude, their kind of models are a little bit different. So you have Haiku, Sonnet, and Opus, and they're different. The models, each of those models themselves are different sizes in terms of the amount of parameters. Let's say I want advice on a marketing campaign. A normal AI model, when I ask that question, it activates the entire model. So let's say the whole model is 20 people. It asks every single one of those 20 people. But somebody in there is a junior school teacher that's never had done anything with marketing at all. And there's all sorts of, so it takes a while and uses a lot of compute. What Mixture of Experts did is it picks out the experts, the mixture of the people there that it should ask. So it activates certain parts of the model and asks those people. With Claude Opus, now this is all, it's inferred, it's not published, but this is what we all think it's been designed as. Opus seems to be like one of the biggest models out there that doesn't use as much Mixture of Experts, and why anybody who uses Claude knows that if you use it in chat and you're on Opus, it doesn't take a lot to burn through your rate limits very quickly for the day, and there's like no more Claude for you today. But all of the Claude models, what they've done is there's an extended thinking button that you just push to trigger the reasoning model, and in in Gemini, it's they now have 3 tiers of models. So with Gemini 3, you have Flash, which is the instant model, which is brilliant. Like in terms of an instant model, I don't know what they've done there, but it's mind blowing how good it is. In some cases, it does better than the thinking models. Like it's for some scenarios, and it's instant and cheap. But then they have a thinking model and then a pro model as well, and it's just the reasoning effort just goes up on each of those.
Pretty interesting about the mixture of experts. And I'm curious what you think about this. Historically, what I would do when I asked it to ask me questions, what I'd also ask it to act like a specific expert. And sometimes I go as far as saying like, hey, I specifically want you to act like Seth Godin, if it's something that's around marketing and positioning, for example. And I'm curious now if it might be more capable than my picking the experts at picking the experts itself, or would you advise people to continue kind of putting the expertise they think they're looking for?
You don't need to do that anymore. It was actually one of the, I've forgotten her name, but she's on the Claude, she's one of the Claude leaders, and she's really responsible for the personality of Claude. But she had this brilliant saying in the one podcast I listened to, which is, you can prompt your way to the next version of the model. Now, if you think about it, that's what you were doing back then. Is you were used before mixture of experts, and that was an innovation. And that's what you get through research. So you ask, if you were to ask anybody at OpenAI, what kind of company is OpenAI? They all have the same answer. We're a research company. Like even though so for a research company, you guys build pretty good apps and you're good at marketing and all these things. It's like we're a research company because you get mixture of experts and reasoning models through research. That's where that comes through. And we, at one point, the whole idea was, well, let's just keep making the models bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. But we don't have enough chips to wait. We don't have enough chips, first of all, to surface these massive models. And if you say, hey, what should I cook for dinner? What's a good fish recipe? Do you want to wait like 2 hours whilst it goes and figures out an answer in this massive model? So that's where a mixture of experts came through. But that was definitely very helpful back then. It was before reasoning models as well. It used to be called, what was it called? It was literally called chain of thought. Like you'd say, first I want you to do this, then I want you to do that, then I want you to do that. Mm-hmm. So you would kind of instruct how it should go about the task. Reasoning models completely fix that, and then the actual mixture of experts innovation fixes that as well. What I would say though is that it all helps. Like it really does help. Like I'm a lazy prompter, and what the best thing I could do would be to actually sit for a bit and write a really good prompt, and then ask me 5 more questions before answering. So it definitely all helps.
Cool. I want to transition to this conversation. You mentioned it briefly around the CIO and their more defensive stance, making sure the company is protected and so forth. And as far as kind of driving this adoption and power users, there's some data that I imagine recommend people don't put up there versus things that they should feel more comfortable. And this is all kind of subject to what kind of subscription you have and so forth. And so what tends to be your advice there in terms of what kind of stuff is okay to put where?
Yeah, so, okay. The first piece of advice is to actually get clear. It's been like, let's call it 2 years. Like it's been 3 actually since ChatGPT was released. But let's say you've had a good 2 years now where this is real, and yet we still work with customers, most customers at the beginning, they're terrified of putting any data in because they're actually not worried about a breach. They actually think it natively, like, this is what it's going to do. It's going to train the model, and all of a sudden my data is going to be available to everybody else. So the first piece of advice is actually get a proper answer on that. And all these companies have a trust portal. So go to trust.openai.com and get it answered for yourself. Now, if you are on the free version of these tools, it's free for your bank balance. but you are paying for it. You're trading data for value. And this should not be a surprise. We do this every single day. If you have Instagram, if you have LinkedIn, these are free tools for your wallet, but they're not free for what you're seeing in front of you, the ads that are being surfaced. It's using your data to give you targeted ads. You're trading data for value so that people can advertise to you. With AI, there's two factors at play. One is there isn't an ad-supported tier yet. OpenAI just announced theirs on ChatGPT for the free and the ChatGPT Go version, which is like the $8 version. It's going to be an ad-supported tier. It's not going to affect. The model isn't going to recommend one holiday over another, like in some kind of hidden biased way. It'll surface up as an ad, as a sponsored thing, kind of like how Google does. You have sponsored results. So that's the first thing with the free versions. You're offering up data for value. The second thing is that all of the internet, all of the data on the open web has already been trained on. Then and so now that's a process called pre-training, and like it's a bit more than that, but pre-training, grab all the data on the internet, train it on that. Then there's a whole lot of license data as well, like New York Times, things like that, Reddit, whatever, trained on that. But where there's incredible use, people think that like the model providers want to understand, like they don't care really. There's no data. They don't care about my tax return. They just don't. They don't care about my bank balance. They just don't. Like there's nothing valuable in there. What they do care about though is my use of it. Now, if you think of a thinking model, if I ask, help me come up with a marketing strategy, blah, 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 it produces something. And then I ask another question, then I ask another question, ask another question. I got to the outcome I wanted. There's like 4, but I've asked 4 different questions. If you could train AI on that chat thread, like I, in theory, could skip those 4 steps because it would just know that these are likely my follow-up things I need, like that will prompt additional questions. So there's an incredible value in that data of how people are using it. And so on the free and consumer tiers, so even if you're paying for it, by default on ChatGPT and on Claude now as well, you are opted in to training your data. You can opt out, even on the free one. It's just a simple setting. You can opt out of training the model. Now, on the business ones, so usually called it's like ChatGPT Business or Enterprise, same in Claude. These are now business tools that have the same security certifications that if you were building one of these tools yourself, that you would make sure it gets so that it can land up in any regulated industry, any corporate in the world. And so now it's SOC 2 Type 2, ISO 27001, all of those types of things are it's certified on this thing. So it doesn't train up on the model. It doesn't train the model. Your data is secure, all of that. But of course, go look at that yourself. There is a nuance though. So just because it's secure may not mean it's compliant. If you've hired somebody or you're assessing somebody, a bunch of consultants are going to help you with this. If you ask them what happens to my data, or what happens to my data, and they don't have a super simple answer, don't speak to them. Like, please, they will cause you to be more confused at the end of it. And if the answer, what happens to my data, is like a $250,000 PowerPoint to answer that, like, don't do it. Target people who have depth. If they've read the trust portals, if they've seen the SOC 2 Type 2, you can request the report. It gets issued, so you can literally see what happens. And what you'll land up with is realizing that your data is a lot more secure than a lot of the things you're using it for today. Now, I'll just round out with one more comment. Because I'm using this for a lot of, particularly when I use it as like a coach mentor, like how good would a therapist or a coach or a mentor be if you can't tell it everything? Like it would kind of suck, right? Like if you held back information. Even I find it uncomfortable because I go, what if they're lying? Like there's no evidence that they are. Like, what if there is some way that this is being trained on, something like that? There's absolutely I've seen no evidence of that whatsoever. But when there is that little moment where I go, well, what if there's some kind of threat actor or some catastrophic breach, and so many controls failed? If you have any information like that you're for a moment hesitant, it has a temporary chat feature. All of these tools do. All right, so they it's in the top right-hand corner. It's basically like the incognito mode of AI. Temporary chat doesn't store anything about you. As soon as you close that window, and I found myself, I close the window and then I want to go back to carry on the conversation later, and it's gone, and I'm kind of frustrated. And then I go, oh no, that's kind of the point. Is like, I want this to be temporary. So there's like be trained that way. Now, the great news about this is that if you're in a regulated industry and you have a policy that stops you from doing certain things, but you're allowed to do other things, at the moment it's been additional work and effort to put what's called a prompt security layer in your browser and on your network that basically stops you from using AI the wrong way. It doesn't stop you from using AI, you can still use it, but if you pop in a prompt, it intercepts the prompt. Basically, it slows the whole thing down a little bit, but like it can do that. What's happening next is, and you can see this in kind of beta already, is you attach your acceptable use policies. The company attaches it to the tool. It's available in ChatGPT Enterprise now, and they'll be able to configure the tool itself to review the acceptable use policy for every prompt. And they'll be able to configure: do I decline or do I alert? Like, it looks like you've given me credit card information of a customer, but it's not actually. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's you're testing something and it's a fake credit card, right? So like you'll be able to say like, well, your acceptable use policy ideally should say that don't use these things unless it's for testing purposes. And then it could maybe alert you and say, is this for testing purposes? That type of thing. So those things are all kind of happening at the moment. The good news is that everybody's kind of incentivized to make it faster and cheaper, and more adoption. They have to answer these questions along the way, and also not operate on trust. Like, it sucks to operate on trusting your employees will do the right thing. The system shouldn't allow you to do it. Like, you shouldn't trust your employees to delete the entire customer database in your CRM. That's something you shouldn't trust your employees not to do. They can't do it, even if they tried. So, like, that's where we need to get to with how these tools are enforced.
As we wrap up here, there's a few things that we'd love to know. The audience do tend to come in here wanting to know about fostering really engaged teams that ship delightful products. So the first thing that I'd love to know is if there's like a North Star amazing team that you find particularly inspirational, aspirational, that you align kind of your own teams towards.
Yeah, definitely. So there, about 10 years ago, I worked for a startup called Cloud Sherpas that kind of doubled in size each year for 3 years and then got acquired. But a lot of my principles, or maybe principles is the wrong word, but a lot of the approach or the culture that I aspire the company to have is very much based around that team. And it was actually quite simple in many ways. One was like hire really well, like that's kind of a no-brainer, but it was more they hired for culture and capability. Like they hired for kind of back the jockey, not the horse vibes. Like, even if somebody wasn't like an excellent solution architect or something like that, maybe a bit more junior than what you're looking for, but you just knew this person was going to be a massively capable person. They hired like that. They paid well as well, so that was quite good. Try to keep the team relatively small, kind of like what Dario Amodei is doing at Anthropic. He talks about talent density a lot. Wants to have a small, highly capable team, and also just had a culture of just letting people kind of create, get on with it, give them certain guardrails, but there wasn't much process, there wasn't much governance. It was just like trusting the team to like create some magic. And still to this day, even some of the people I have working with me now, I hired them like a year ago. It had been like 9 years since I'd worked with them, but we exchanged texts a few times, and That's definitely something that kind of a culture we want to emulate and keep as we grow.
Awesome. All of those make sense. And then the other thing is around really a delightful product or service that you got to unbox or experience recently.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, there's an AI meeting note taker called Granola that is this is like a granola.ai. Oh, geez, like these guys are, I don't know how they've done this, but they're just like working with magic there. It's also a reminder that there's infinite product opportunities in AI because of people like bag AI wrappers, things that just kind of wrap around an AI model and just like a skin over it. But we do this every single day. Like we always choose something that's convenient and like optimized at the edges. And that's basically what they've done. There's been a million note takers in the past, but the way that this thing, how well it handles the recording, just the beautiful interactions, and also how well it handles the notes it creates with the different templates. It's just like masterful. I keep telling people about just this is pretty amazing.
Awesome. We'll have to check out and make sure it's in the show notes. And then finally, we've heard a number of them from you already, but is there a particularly novel or delightful use of AI that you've experienced yourself or someone has showed you?
Yeah, so the most novel way that I've been using it recently, it was really over the Christmas break that inspired this. I was really burnt out, and when I was reflecting on the year ahead, I spent ages in Claude. Claude does this very well. You could absolutely do it with ChatGPT as well, but Claude just has a particular style and taste that I really like for this particular activity. Spend a while with AI and be honest about your flaws, your insecurities. You can be very honest, and then start using it to brainstorm with it the year ahead, and use it to like get down to what I've called like a couple of cornerstone habits that I want to do every single day, and then use it to reflect on those and to check in. And that I found this remarkably useful. Like it's made a real impact, and particularly when I've been overly critical of myself or harsh, it's been amazing how well it grounds me on that. But what it's also been amazing with is giving me a massive reality check. Like, so if I plan the day and then all of us, I say I have to get this thing done in the next 20 minutes, and then it picks up that all of a sudden I'm asking about all sorts of other stuff, it's pulling me back. It says, hang on, can I just cut you off here, David? Like, we agreed, and you told me to keep you honest. I grounded it to say, have like a big brother, as if you're my big brother, not big brother like some kind of spy agency spying on you, but have like a big brother energy, like you're my biggest supporter, but you're also going to be honest with me and keep me on track. You want nothing other than to see me succeed, but you're going to do it in a way to save me from myself. And it's been mind blowing, particularly giving it access to your calendar and email. That's been very helpful too.
I'm curious if you want to share one or two of the habits that you're looking to bring forward in the year.
Yeah, definitely. It's really evolved because there were a few days. So initially it was 8, but then there were a couple of days where I was really proud of myself. I tend to be overly critical. AI also pointed that out to me. I was really proud of myself for accomplishing like quite a few things each day, but it wasn't all 8. And then so I separated it into like 4 of these cornerstones and then the others. And as long as I do those cornerstones, I'm very happy. Those cornerstones are very simple. They're simple for most people, but actually quite hard for me. I really struggle with attention and ADHD. It's been a lifelong issue.
Same.
The first cornerstone habit is, have I spent 10 minutes to plan the day? Like, that's it. Have I planned the day? Even if I follow that, if I don't follow the plan, that's not the objective. The objective is to plan the day, at least to know. And it's actually so nice at the end of that first little bit. Sometimes it means like actually emailing some people to tell them, I'm not going to get that thing to you today. That's fine. People don't want you to get it to them today. They want you to get the task done when you said you would. That's it. Like, they don't want it done on Friday, or they don't want it done on Thursday or Friday. They just want it done on the day that you said it would be done. And so planning the day and being realistic has been fantastic. The second one is, have I done 45 minutes of exercise? And there's kind of a mini one there, which is like 15. Like maybe that's all I could muster that day. The third one is very much around diet. So have I eaten clean, nutritious, deliberate food? Comes again from the planning. That's why it's the cornerstone. If I know I'm going to be at an airport or something like that, it's better to be prepared. And then the final one is just my evening routine. And this is usually a reflection on the previous day. Did I wind down? Because I really struggle with going to sleep. My mind is always a million miles an hour. And did I wind down? I've got basically a routine there with devices and things like that. And I found as long as I do those, I feel kind of really proud of myself, bulletproof, and that I'm behaving in a way that is really bringing out my best behavior and my best self with the other ones. The other ones are very much around some family things, some work objectives that I'm trying to do and things like that. But I've honed in on just those 4.
Well, appreciate you sharing that. I'm sure there's a number of business owners, entrepreneurs that kind of struggle with the same 4 things, and starting small and starting now is probably the best way to get to where we want to get to. Hey, last thing as we wrap up is for folks listening, if they want to get a hold of you and they're curious to carry the conversation deeper, what's the best way for you to get contact with or for your team?
Yeah, so we're massive AI optimists, and we've made it easy for you to get started. We host a monthly webinar that's packed with value. It's completely free. It's not a sales pitch. You're going to learn a ton. Bring your whole team. Just go to startlearning.ai. Startlearning.ai. You'll see the landing page of the webinar. No idea how I got that domain, how it wasn't taken already, but very happy. And the second one is just connect me on LinkedIn. One of the reasons why I think a lot of our business is built off of my LinkedIn presence is I'm just honest. I don't follow any of the clickbait advice. I never use AI to write a LinkedIn post. I'm just honest. And I think that's what people really want in this AI noise is just authenticity. What do you really think? Have you used the tool? I'd love to engage with you and connect with you.
Awesome. Hey, Dawid, thank you so much for making time here to join Convergence.fm. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Ashok. And great podcast. And I'm sure we'll chat again soon.
Hope you found that episode enjoyable and useful with Dawid Naude. There's a few things that I found particularly useful, and I want to share those. The first one is that leadership delegates this to IT when AI evolution is a CEO and board level transformation. When leaders become power users, the adoption is going to accelerate. But when they stay in strategy mode and delegate it, you're not going to see a ton. So if your leadership team isn't actively using AI daily, you're putting yourself at huge risk. So block off time every day and make sure that you talk about this. This is similar to early ERP and CRM adoptions and other technology platform adoptions where there's an operational shift that needs to be won. And if you treat it as a tech and CIO thing, you're going to struggle for years. The second one is starting with building AI capability versus jumping to custom builds. And it's one of the most striking stories that we got to hear from that small real estate firm that just used off-the-shelf GPT workflows. And they translated materials into 7 languages. They created AI-generated CEO updates. And they made a huge impact to their business with just off-the-shelf tools, but really learning how to harness it for themselves. And they ultimately outpaced their large enterprise customers, or competitors rather, that were spending millions on the same thing. So remember that adoption effectively is more important than sophistication. So I would say get to know the tools before you start building custom things. Building late is not just advice, it's competitive advantage when you have a real sense of what needs to be built. The champions model is the third thing that I thought was really useful. I've gotten to experience this a ton of times at the work we did at Integral, where finding your high performing talent that is really keen on adopting this technology early, maybe folks that already use this, and creating a champion group across a vertical slice of your organization is also extremely important so that this doesn't stagnate just on your ownership and leadership layer, or your employees are using it without guardrails, governance, and direction, and even prioritization from leadership. This kind of mirrors how Toyota scaled lean. It's not through mandates, but it's through internal practitioners that eventually spread the gospel. Number 4, your org chart and job descriptions are already outdated. AI is just going to expose it. What I loved is that they had those champions rewrite their own job descriptions after 3 months. I think that creates a really great translation layer to everybody else, as well as has power users thinking through where the low value and high value work that the humans can be doing and what needs to be delegated to the AI. That example of the sales rep that becomes more into a strategist, a relationship builder, having AI augmentation, I thought that was really great. I think generally you want AI handling the intelligence and you want to hold on to the judgment pieces. Because at the end of the day, it's not just efficiency, it's organizational redesign while knowing what AI is good at and what the humans need to continue being good at in order to differentiate your business. Number 5, I think there's a lot of people who make the mistake of thinking applying tools is transformation. If you ask AI to ask you better questions, for example, or use it as a thinking partner and then embed it into your daily workflows, that's a great way to think about it versus just asking AI a very limited question and expecting it to have really brilliant outcomes. Things like ask me 5 questions before answering may be a good way to start, and then you build on from there. Number 6, once you start to get to know it, it's pretty important to understand model selection. A lot of the foundational models now will help you think through which model is going to use, but just know that there's thinking models and fast models. And the ones that you kind of move a little bit closer towards needing judgment, those are thinking models. Those are also the ones that I find myself articulating the goals and splitting up the work a lot more for AI so that it has to make fewer judgment calls, but I can get the benefit of its much superior intelligence to mine. Number 7, a lot of people are worried about data leakage and privacy. And while those are real concerns, I think the one to be more worried about is around adoption and being really slow. Enterprise tools are already really highly secure, and the bigger risk is really not adopting them faster enough. So a better framing might be that free tools are data for value, whereas the enterprise tools that you're signing up for, paying for, negotiating contracts are secure and compliant along with a lot of the smarts. So don't get paralyzed, get informed, and get moving. Number 8, my final one, AI works best as a personal operating system first. One of the most interesting personal use cases is how Dawid uses it to plan his day, reflect on habits, and act as a big brother accountability system for himself first and then for his company. This is not just for productivity. He's using it to inform behavior change. Now, this was recorded pre-OpenClaw, so I'm sure David's got a whole bunch of different inputs on this. If you're using something like a chief of staff AI using OpenClaw, or maybe something that you've built using Claude Code. And I feel like using it to help you think and prioritize your own time first and be a reminder for what priorities your best version of yourself has is an amazing way to get started on how AI can be more productive for you so that as a more productive leader, you can have a more productive company. Before we wrap this episode, I had one quick note. The team here at Convergence.fm is going to be taking a short pause for the next couple of months. And the reason here is pretty simple. We're heads down building our next venture. A lot of the conversations you've heard on this podcast around AI adoption, operating models, how teams actually execute, are things that we're putting into practice in a much more hands-on way with a small set of companies working directly with the board or the owners or whoever is operating and managing the P&L as well as the balance sheet. And while we're heads down there and learning, I want to make sure that we come back with a new set of stories, new frameworks from field experience, and talk about the real outcomes that we're bringing for our customers with a much clearer point of view on what's actually working inside mid-market businesses right now and the stories of the before and after of the CEOs, their leadership teams, their boards on how they really evolved using AI. So we'll be back in July with a much more grounded version. But in the meantime, if you're a CEO or an operator and you're actively thinking about how to apply AI in your business, or you're just trying to make sense of where to start, I'll be opening up some time for office hours with our team. And you can go to convergence.fm and contact us through there, or simply email us at officehours@convergence.fm. And we'd be happy to find some time to jam on what you're seeing, what you're trying, and where you might be getting stuck. I appreciate everyone who's been a subscriber of convergence.fm, and also the folks who reached out since then and have given us a lot more instincts on how we're helpful, where we're not, and how to improve this show. This has been a really fun ride for us, and we'll wrap up over the next few episodes that we launch before taking this pause. Stay subscribed on the same channels, and while we may change the name, you will continue to hear from us on the same places. We'll see you then. Thank you for joining me on the Convergence Podcast today. Subscribe to the Convergence Podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your content. If you're listening and found this helpful, please give us a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button and tell me what you think about what you heard today.